Hi everyone, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. Thank you for watching. This is an episode I've been waiting to do for a long time. Just a matter of getting, enough vinyl so that I felt I could do a pretty good job. And I'm talking about my Alice Cooper vinyl collection. I did an Alice Cooper episode where I went through CDs, and I went through, did one with Will where we went through what collections we had at the time. Kind of an incomplete one. He had just seen him in concert, so I haven't actually done an Alice Cooper vinyl episode, and there's a lot of vinyl to talk about, and I still don't have all of his albums. But I'm doing it anyway because I've got all of his albums that he released when albums originally came out. So there's a lot here to talk about. So we'll get started with the first Alice Cooper album, all the way back to 1969. Just one of a handful of 60s albums I have. His debut, Pretty's For You. It's not the easiest thing to find an original copy of this. I don't know how original it is, but it's of its time. It's on Frank Zappa's Straight Records, and this copy is Canadian. It says it's manufactured and distributed by Kinney Music of Canada, which I believe is what became WEA Music. That's how far back this goes. For a debut album, they actually spent money for a gatefold, the record label. And the record itself, I don't know if it had something else on the sleeve. This copy I have just has a plain white sleeve and the Burbank Warner Brothers label, which tells me that this might be a later 70s issue because the Straight logo had it had a different logo. This just says Warner Brothers on it, but I was happy to find it either way. Next up is the second Alice Cooper album, 1970. This is Easy Action, and this shows you what the Straight logo actually looked like alongside of the Warner Brothers logo. And again, this one, you don't see this one too much either. This one says manufactured and distributed by WEA Music of Canada, so they weren't Kinney anymore. I wonder if that has to do with Kinney shoes. I don't know. And instead of coming out on the end, which you'd think it would, the record comes out. I've got a few like this. It comes out in the middle here, like so. And again, just a plain white sleeve on the copy that I found. And the Burbank, the Palm Trees, Warner Brothers label on here. I gotta be honest, I know there's a lot of people that swear by these first two albums. I'm not a particularly 60s psychedelic rock guy. I'm not a Zappa fan. I find those first two Alice Cooper albums pretty much unlistenable. And all I can say is thank God for Bob Ezra, because he kept their weirdness, but he made them tuneful. And that's the reason anybody knows who Alice Cooper is today. And of course, that era got started in 1971 with one of my favorite Alice albums, Love It to Death. And I do. This is a fantastic album. Of course, the rarest copies of this have Alice's finger kind of poking out here, whatever, suggestively. This is a very worn copy, a lot of ring wear. It says Love It to Death, Alice Cooper up here. This is a Canadian copy. And I think this is just a perfect 70s rock album from start to finish. Gatefold with Alice's old makeup. And I don't know what the original sleeve would have been, but this came in the sort of ugly olive green Warner Brothers label, which I think is another reason why I think the first two with the Burbank Palm Tree label are newer, because I think they originally would have looked like this if they'd been just on Warner Brothers. This is a great album. 18 came off of this album, Ballad of Dwight Fry. It's just a good album all the way through. It's the first of Alice's early catalog that I actually got to hear, thanks to my buddy Matt, who got me really listening to Alice past the hits, pardon me. And at this point, they were releasing albums at a rapid pace, which of course led to the original band's demise. She could only keep up that pace for so long. The next album also came out in 1971, Killer. This is also on Warner Brothers, and I'm pretty sure this is a Canadian edition as well. Yes, it is. Another big album for Alice, Under My Wheels, came off of this one. Desperado, Be My Lover, good album. I don't listen to it that much because my favorite songs on it all appear elsewhere. So it's kind of one of those things. And the one song everybody would, know by Alice Cooper, even if they didn't know who Alice Cooper was, of course, is School's Out. And this is one of the coolest. My copy's a little beat up. This is why I love vinyl. The 70s vinyl packaging was really, didn't compare to anything else. Let me just kind of show you. I'm going to get the record out of the way that kind of comes out here. This one's very scratched. Again, the olive green Warner Brothers label on it. This came out, you'll notice it's rounded at the end. This came out to fold up like an old school desk, and when you folded it up, picture the band, the track listings and credits were written like an old report card. The record slid out of here, and originally it came packaged in a pair of paper panties, and those copies are very, very rare to find with them intact. This isn't like that. And on the back, it's folded out like this too. Apparently you could make a stand out of it. I've never actually tried, but it's very cool. The next one I've got a couple of copies of. One's on my wall. I've got another one here to show you. More really, really cool packaging. And the most successful album by the original Alice Cooper group, $1 Billion Babies, 1973. That's like a snakeskin wallet. Now some copies of it are actually rounded like a wallet. This is probably a later issue, so it's not, it's completely square. This was a #1 album. Okay, photo of the band there, and the lyrics to the songs. And this one is more like the Warner Brothers albums you'd see in the 80s, which makes me think this is definitely a reissue. It's just got the white background with the faded Warner Brothers logos mixed in. And it also came with this giant $1 billion bill, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. And the cool packaging only continues. They were really pioneers. This is one of the best finds I've ever made, because Matt and I were just about leaving this antique store in Bangor when I discovered this. And I'm not ripping anything. The plastic was taped, so it's completely safe. And late 1973, the final Alice Cooper Band album, new material, Muscle of Love. And this came in this is a cardboard box. This is heavy cardboard. And it unfolds like so. I'm going to set the cardboard down and show you the innards of this thing. There's just a sheet here, nothing on the other side, but this has the songs. Oh, okay, the songs are upside down. It's got photos of the band. This album is usually not talked about like the other Alice Cooper Band albums. I really like this album, actually. In some parts of the world, this is actually used as the cover. It's like a before and after. And the record itself is using the Burbank label, which I think was of its time by now. It's hard to find that one intact. Okay, next up. And Alice Cooper was weird because they were big in concert. They were known for their theatricality and the snakes and the guillotines and the electric chair and all that, but they also had hit singles. They had radio hits, enough so that in 1974, Warner Brothers put out Alice Cooper's Greatest Hits. They filled up this album with songs that were on the radio, for the most part. There's 12 songs on here. And I love this artwork. I wish that it was a gatefold. Probably some copies of it are. This is a Canadian copy on Warner Brothers. There's lots of in-jokes here. There's an 18 here. The headline of the newspaper says School's Out. The $1 Billion Babies logo. Yeah, good stuff. Also, this front artwork here was done by a guy named Drew Sturzan, who did a lot of movie posters. If you can picture the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie poster, it's the same style. Sort of a photorealism. Maybe that's the wrong word. This is the sleeve that came with it. And the record itself is your typical white Warner Brothers label. Probably a reissue. So that's the end of the Alice Cooper Band albums. but Alice Cooper, the solo artist, continued, of course. And got off to a good start, I would say. 1975, Welcome to My Nightmare. This is a Canadian edition, and it's the only Alice Cooper, and I don't know why this is, on Atlantic Records instead of Warner Brothers, even though they had the same parent company. For some reason, this one came out on Atlantic, and I'm not sure why. This is a Canadian edition. Great album. Great album. A TV special to go with this, of course. And here is the inner sleeve. Somebody must have had their name on there. It was marked out. And yeah, the red and green Atlantic label. Very strange, because he went right back to Warner Brothers. And a lot of Alice's albums went in twos, conceptually, and this is one of the main instances of that happening. 1976, in a lot of ways, the follow-up to Welcome to My Nightmare, Alice Cooper Goes to Hell, which is exactly what it sounds like. This photo is actually from the picture on the inside of Billion Dollar Babies, with sort of all the detail ironed out, washed out. It's kind of a creepy effect, but cool. This is a U.S. edition on Warner Brothers. I love this album, and I like the way that it's just lyrics on this sleeve here. I love the way they're printed, and there's a story to go with it. And just a plain white label with the record itself, with the Burbank logo on it, label. Next one to come out, 1977. Pretty much an album a year. I don't like this album as much as the previous ones all the way through, but it does have some great songs on it. It's made to look like a mystery novel, Lace and Whiskey. That's sort of the overall concept of this, and this is a Canadian edition on Warner Brothers. It's written like there's book reviews on the back. Alice sitting at a typewriter, short hair, or at least his hair's pulled back, and his character for this album was, I think his name was Maurice Escargot. There he is there. There's a couple really cheesy videos from this album and this character. There you go. There's all the credits, not the lyrics. And actually, surprisingly, for the first time, we have a customized label. There you go. Also in 1977, one of my least favorite live albums ever. I think it's the laziest sounding, most tired sounding performance by a good musician, good band, good songs. I don't like this album at all. It's the Alice Cooper Show. He wasn't in good shape when he recorded this. It was a contractual obligation. I wish they'd waited. He's got much better live albums than this. Unfortunately, this is the only officially released one from the 70s, which is too bad. This is a Canadian edition. No, it's a U.S. edition, and it's an RCA Music Service edition here. Yeah, just like to look at the track listing, it's fantastic, but it's not good. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there loves this album. I don't have any personal connection to it. I just think it's very lazy sounding, and I don't like the way that the band does these songs. Burbank label there. 1978, another concept album, another brilliantly packaged album. This is From the Inside. Details Alice's stay in rehab, which he actually stayed in an asylum, and apparently all the songs in here are about the characters he met in that asylum. This is a U.S. edition on Warner. This album opens up in so many cool ways. So it unfolds like here. These are all characters from the songs on the album. The doors open up in the back here, and they've all got their certificates that they've been released. And yeah, record itself. There you go, another shot of that. And Alice in the Quiet Room. Lyrics. It's interesting because this album is practically, musically you could call it yacht rock. It was produced by David Foster. It's got a lot of the Toto guys on here. The songs were co-written with Elton John's lyricist Bertie Taupin. It's not heavy in the least. There's a couple rockers on it, but it's not heavy. And yeah, it's musically it's very yacht rock if you don't pay too much attention to the lyrics. There you go, standard Warner Brothers label. Now we're into Alice's 80s period, his early 80s period, which I'm a big fan of. I know it has a cult following out there. Alice has a lot of periods in his career, and his early 80s period, some of the most, honestly, the most adventurous, the just plain oddest music he ever did. Never mind the theatrics in the early 70s. The weirdest stuff Alice ever did, we're getting to right now. And my favorite of all of them is the first one to come out, 1980s, Flush the Fashion. This is Alice's new wave album, kind of. It's still a rock album, but it was produced by Roy Thomas Baker. It's very early 80s production sounding. It's a very short album. I think it clocks in maybe a half an hour. He was determined to make this a new beginning, thus the 80 put up here. This is a Canadian edition on Warner Brothers. Cut his hair, hardly looks like him. Actually managed to score a minor hit with the song Clones. And I just think the songs on this album are so catchy and so odd. I really enjoy this album. And even if you don't like it, if you put it on, it'll be over before you know it. And this has the standard Warner Brothers label on it. So next thing I want to show you is, I've got a lot of sealed vinyl, but a lot of it was bought new. This one I actually found used. And I actually bought it thinking that I might meet Alice in Portland, Maine in 2000 when we saw him on the Brutal Planet tour. We actually ran into him, but we were so stunned to see him when we did, he was gone before we knew it. Or I would have gotten him to sign this. I would have opened it. This is a deleted, punched version of his 1981 album, Special Forces. And again, another very, very bizarre album, but one of my all-time favorites. I just think the songs are really catchy on here. Now, this is a US edition on Warner Brothers, and such was Warner Brothers' lack of attention to the artist that the I's were not getting dotted and the T's were not getting crossed. There's actually a song, last song listed on here is called Look at You Over There, Ripping the Sawdust from My Teddy Bear. Doesn't appear on this album. It was a mystery for Alice Cooper fans for many years until it eventually appeared on his 1999 box set. But apparently the sleeves were all printed up, so there you go. It's not on here, but it looks like it is. And the label itself is a typical Warner Brothers. So there you go. I can only assume it's the typical Warner Brothers label on it. Next up, 1982, another album I just love. It is so odd and strange. Zipper Catches Skin. If I hold that back, maybe you could see Alice Cooper is written along the top here in red. These actually have the lyrics to the album printed on it. If you look at it close enough, there's a little part here, there's blood, and that actually says Zipper Catches Skin. I'm not going to go into much more detail than that. Ouch. And you could tell by the expression on Alice's face, it's made to look like that's what happened. Canadian edition on Warner Brothers, and this is odd. I mean, just, I'll just read some of the song titles on here. No Baloney Homo Sapiens. I Better Be Good. I'm Alive. That was the day my dead pet returned to save my life. Zorro's Ascent. So very strange. So very strange. This is the record itself, Warner Brothers. Next up is one that I could not find a used copy of, and I ended up getting a reissue copy that just came out 2 or 3 years ago. This is 1983 album Dada. This is his darkest album, I think, ever. He was really struggling with his addictions at that point. As a matter of fact, the last song, Pass the Gun Around, is almost chilling. I mean, pass the gun around means pass the bottle around. He and Bob Ezrin and Dick Wagner and some of the people who worked on this album, none of them were in good shape. This is a very strange album. I don't like it as much as the ones before it, although it does have its moments. It's all electronic drums, I think, for the most part. There's still some catchy songs on here. Even at his worst, he still made an effort on these albums. But lyrics are on the back and the credits. And yeah, just very strange. And this was his final album for Warner Brothers. Fulfilled a long contract. And it was 3 years before anybody heard from Alice again, until he re-emerged sober with this album, Constrictor, from 1986. This is a punched out copy here. And this is a US copy on MCA. He did a couple albums for MCA. All the lyrics are on the back. He was really going for more of well, at least a heavy metal look. The album is actually pretty slick sounding. I'm not a huge fan of the production on this album, and some of the songs on it I'm not crazy about either. Came on the standard Rainbow MCA label. He did very, very well on the road, though. People loved the fact that he was back, literally. Followed it up next year with, I think, a better album, a better produced album. Michael Wagner behind the boards this time for Raise Your Fist and Yell. This is a Canadian copy on MCA. Again, lyrics printed on the back instead of a sleeve, which is unusual. And the inner sleeve, on one side is that, and the other side is this. And again, the Rainbow MCA label. So of course, for my age group, in 1989, I would have been 15, and Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, that was the period. It's one of my favorite periods of music. It might be my single favorite period of music, and this was not overlooked by Alice Cooper, who really, really wanted to get back on the radio. So he joined up with hit songwriter Desmond Child, and the result was this, Trash. This came out in July of 1989, gave him one of his biggest ever hits with Poison, song that went all the way to number 7. And the whole album basically follows that theme. Now, I gotta be honest with you, the songs are great. I'm not crazy about Desmond Child's production. It's a little bit overdone, it's kind of dated sounding. I wish he'd had another producer, but you can't argue with the songs. Ton of guest stars on here. And this is the easiest one to find for a used copy on vinyl. This is a US copy on Epic. There was a lyric sleeve that came with this originally. It didn't come with the copy I found. The label itself is the standard Epic label. He followed that up with an album that unfortunately didn't do as well, but I think is a stronger album, song for song. It's definitely a better produced album. 1991, Hey Stupid. This came out on Epic, and this is a 2017 reissue from Music on Vinyl. Very glossy, slick cover here. And this album, I think, is just fantastic. Just fantastic. Lyric sheet instead of a sleeve. And black sleeve that came with this, and very, very thick vinyl. And the label is made to look like an Epic record would have at the time. But the record itself is a lot thicker. Now I'm missing a bunch. But Hey Stupid was, I think, Alice's last album to come out on vinyl domestically in North America, until not counting reissues. So the next thing I have to show you, we jump ahead 10 years. 2001, when Alice was kind of in his new metal phase. This is Dragontown, and this is on E1 Entertainment. And I'm sad to say it looks like they took the CD cover and blew it up, because it's not very clear, and especially if you try to read these song titles, you can tell that it was blown up as opposed to produced for vinyl. And the credits, as a result, I find are very, very hard to read. It's cool to have this on vinyl. There are just plain white sleeves with this, but the vinyl itself is very cool. I will show you. It's thick vinyl, and it is orange. Really, really stands out. Next thing I have to show you is Alice's 2005 album, which originally was not released on vinyl, only came out in limited edition Record Store Day 2019, Dirty Diamonds. A great album. It originally came out on New West Records, and that is the label that's credited with reissuing it here. Unfortunately, Alice bounced around from indie label to indie label at this point, which is crazy for an artist of his stature. But a good album, and I'm glad to have it on vinyl. An Alice Cooper album that we dedicated an episode to, came out in 2017. I still think it's really, really good, is Paranormal. This one is on EAR Music, and highly recommend this one. All of Alice's latter-day albums are just, they're worth giving a shot to. In 2018, as he usually does, he follows up an album with a live album, A Paranormal Evening with Alice Cooper at the Olympia in Paris. It's a 2-vinyl set, came out in 2018. This is on EAR Music again. Pretty broad spectrum, covering his career all the way, from 18 all the way through to Paranoid Personality. He does The World Needs Guts on here. He does Pain, one of my favorite tunes from Flush the Fashion, and a great band too. A couple other cool things to show you here. In 2019, I think this was a Record Store Day exclusive. It had been much bootlegged, but it's, I had said earlier that there was no officially released live stuff from Alice's 70s career. Well, this kind of fits that bill. It's Billion Dollar Babies Tour from Houston, Texas in April of 1973. And it's 11 songs, and it's the classic Alice Cooper lineup. This came out on Rhino. Unfortunately, I don't think it came out on CD. It would be cool to hear, because I'm weird and I don't open my vinyl. And last thing I want to show you is the EP that Alice put out in 2019, the Breadcrumbs EP, which I have an episode dedicated to, so I won't go into much detail about that. So I am missing some of Alice's albums, like The Last Temptation, like Brutal Planet. I'm not going to knock myself out looking for them on vinyl. A lot of them are really, really, really expensive because they weren't produced in massive quantities. So I'm always up for reissues when it comes to stuff like that. Hope you enjoyed this episode going through my Alice Cooper vinyl collection. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.